This is our 5th year giving out the Truman Center's Award for Exceptional Moral Courage in Public Service. To kick off that portion of the program, please welcome to the stage Stephen Bailey, Chair of the Truman Center Board of Directors.
Thank you so much. It's a great group, looking good. One of the things I noticed is footwear, and I have to say on our last panel we had some great kicks. We had some slides. I see we got some boots right here in the front row, so I'm feeling energized and really good about this. So I hope this is really as special for you as it is for me. As an exciting conclusion to our programming today, I'm pleased to introduce the presenter for the Truman Center's Award for Exceptional Moral Courage in Public Service. This award recognizes public servants whose values have led them to do what is right, even when doing so might be unpopular or difficult. We designed this award for leaders who have demonstrated to the world what it means to serve the public good and who have ensured our public institutions keep faith with the people and principles for whom they were constructed. This year, we ran the process for selecting this award a little bit differently than we've done in the past. And we incorporated member expertise into the selection process. So you may recall that earlier this year, we asked members for nominees for the award. We received many, and the awardee today comes from one of those recommendations. And Truman member Eva Posner, who will moderate the conversation today, actually nominated this year's awardees. The inaugural award was presented in 2020 to Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, who put his career on the line to speak up against abuses of power. In 2021, Truman presented the award to Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser for her principled leadership on and standing up for racial justice. In 2022, we honored Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield in recognition of a career devoted to public service, from Geneva to Kingston to Monrovia to Washington and many places in between. In 2023, we recognized Congressman Jamie Raskin for a career defined by a principled defense of American democracy. And I have to say that introducing Congressman Raskin is a particular honor for me because he's the only awardee that I didn't have the opportunity to introduce in past years. So getting to know him a bit today and what you stand for, it's really a privilege and an honor to introduce you. So as is our tradition, Congressman Raskin is going to be presenting today's award as last year's awardee. So Jamie Raskin represented Maryland's 8th Congressional District since 2017. We have an 8th Congressional District member here, obviously, or just a real fan of politics. From his time at American University, where he co-founded the Marshall Brennan Constitutional Literacy Project, to his fight in the Maryland legislature to legalize same-sex marriage, to his work in Congress, including as chair of the Oversight Committee's Civil Rights and Civil Liberties Subcommittee, Congressman Raskin has consistently demonstrated our commitment to morality and values in policymaking, even when the political winds might be blowing in a different direction. Following the January 6th insurrection, as the lead impeachment manager for the Senate trial of President Trump, he made a compelling case for President Trump's responsibility for the tragic events of that day. In his service on the United States House Select Committee on the January 6th attack, he dissected the role of far-right extremists and the president's own tweets in inciting the attack on the Capitol. All of this remarkable work aligns closely to Truman's values. It is my great honor to welcome to the stage Congressman Jamie Raskin.
Stephen, thank you for those lovely remarks, and it's an honor to be here and to be introduced by you. And I got to tell you, I've been more excited about this event for Pearson and Justin Jones than I was for when I got the award myself, getting to meet Justin Pearson is quite an honor and quite a privilege. And when I got it, I remember feeling very humbled and moved by it. And all I could say is that, you know, an award like this is best understood in collective terms more than in individual terms. And I think you will see from our two honorees today, one of whom who could be with us and one of whom we're honoring in absentia, that their individual activism and their acts of real individual courage are embedded in movements for change. And that's where the strength and the power comes from. So, you know, the other thing I said was, you know, feeling not quite deserving of this extraordinary award from the Truman Center is that I didn't know whether or not I deserved it, but I would work to deserve it every day. And so these awards are best understood as a challenge and a spur to keep going. And certainly that's extremely fitting for today's honorees, who are very, by my standards, very young people, okay? This is not like a Lifetime Achievement Award or anything for Representative Justin Pearson. So it's a remarkable story, and I'm eager for us to get into the conversation so we can hear more about it. But I know this much. Justin Pearson grew up mostly in Memphis. He grew up for several years in the D.C. area when his dad was in graduate school at Howard and lived in Northern Virginia, although I don't understand why he didn't just live in Silver Spring or Tacoma Park and just, you know, head down that way. But he lived over in Virginia. But most of his childhood, he grew up in Memphis, and he went away to college at Bowdoin and then returned to Memphis, Tennessee, which I love because, you know, a lot of people, when they're in, shall we say, redder states or states maybe that are more likely to criminalize abortion and stuff like that, if they go north, they stay north, or they, you know, all the young people want to live in Berkeley or Brooklyn or something like that. Go back to Tennessee, go back to South Carolina, go back to Georgia and organize, you know. So good for you, Justin Pearson, and he went back to Memphis and he got involved in politics right away. And this story is just absolutely incredible. And a lot of you, I assume everybody, will remember some of what happened last year. Justin got elected to the Tennessee State Legislature from Memphis on March 25, 2023. He got expelled from the Tennessee legislature on April 6th, 2023, 11 days later. That has got to be some kind of historic record in the United States. And he was expelled for an act of remarkable conscience and courage, because the same day that he got sworn in after being elected to the legislature, a terrible massacre took place, not in Memphis, but in Nashville, at the Covenant School. Am I getting the name right, Justin? The Covenant School in Nashville. And there were 3 9-year-olds who were murdered on that day, 3 third graders and 3 adults. And this is just one more in the seemingly endless stream of massacres supplied by the gun violence that has turned gun violence into the #1 leading cause of death for children, for young people under 18 in America. And so Justin Pearson, with his very good friend Justin Jones, who I'll talk about in a moment, who does represent Nashville, they participated in this upsurge of student activism demanding real legislative and public policy action by the Tennessee legislature and by the Tennessee governor and by the adults. But like real leaders, they went and they joined the young people in the protests, which made the leadership of the Tennessee House not very happy, but they hadn't seen anything yet, because Justin Jones and Justin Pearson and one other representative, Representative Johnson, Gloria Johnson, they took to the floor of the Tennessee House. And this, to my mind, is a legislator where the real courage comes in. because they disrupted the ordinary business of the day, because the majority in its wisdom had decided to do nothing about gun violence, nothing about gun safety, despite the fact that there were now thousands of young people and their families in Tennessee demanding action to respond to this atrocity that had taken place in Nashville. And they took to the floor with a bullhorn. Now that takes real chutzpah there, okay? With a bullhorn, and they began to talk about the massacre that had just taken place, about the gun violence, and about this mass movement which had now overtaken the legislative buildings in Tennessee, and they demanded action. And rather than responding with action or debate or discussion, they just terminated the proceeding. They adjourned only to resume on Monday. They took the weekend off, they resumed on Monday, and then moved to expel Representative Pearson and Representative Jones and Representative Johnson. I believe she escaped by one vote. The two Justins were expelled and then were promptly voted back into office by the legislative authorities in their district. And they were voted back in by the people of their districts, and in so doing demonstrated exactly the kind of moral and political and intellectual courage that will ultimately get us through the nightmare of gun violence in America. And we're in the middle of that fight right now, and that's why I'm so honored to be able to be here to toast and to give the award to Representative Pearson. Let me say a word about Representative Justin Jones, who represents Nashville's 52nd District. He was born in Oakland, California, where he was raised by a single mom, putting herself through nursing school. He went to Fisk University. He went to Vanderbilt Divinity School. He organized a 62-day sit-in protest for racial justice outside the state capitol after the murder of George Floyd. He was elected in 2022 as the second youngest lawmaker, and then participated in all of the events that I just told you about. And he too has been a great champion for gun safety and for the young people of their state. On January 10th, 2024, he was the first lawmaker penalized under a new rule allowing the Tennessee legislature to vote to silence for the entire legislative day any lawmaker who's ruled out of order, and it was invoked against him after he described the Speaker of the House, Cameron Sexton, as drunk with power. It sounds like not a bad deal to be able to say that. So, in any event, look, we're talking about a leader of the new generation. We really are. This is an amazing generation, beyond racism, beyond anti-Semitism, beyond misogyny, beyond immigrant bashing. Unfortunately, they're a little bit beyond grammar, too, but that's a different problem. They text all day and they tweet and all that. But other than my grammatical problems with their generation, they're going to save us. And no better representative of that generation than the great representative from Tennessee, Justin Pearson. And come on up. This is the 2024 award for exceptional moral courage in public service, Representative Justin J. Pearson.
Please be seated. Thank you for this. It got my name on it, but it is truly an award for our entire district and our community. It is an award that can just as easily go to Clyde Robinson and Sarah Gladney and Felicia Boyd and our amazing team, because my name, while it is on this amazing award, it is only representative of the people who make me who I am, including my beloved fiance and our chief of staff, my amazing parents, Dr. Kimberly Owens Pearson, Reverend Jason C. Pearson, my 4 brothers, my 6 nieces and nephews, and my community who loves and who has cared for me and supported me in this journey. For such a kind introduction, Congressman, thank you so much. And for your courage in this country. It is an example for all of us who seek to do leadership well in the face of adversity. And so thank you. I'm the son of a preacher and a teacher. I'm from the South, and so they had to give me a time clock to make sure that I don't keep y'all too long. But as God would have it, the time clock is out of my view when I'm looking this way. So this side of the room, y'all gotta be real hype to keep me going. Yeah, there we go. There we go. I have but a few words to share, and I'm very excited about the conversation that we are going to have about the state of our democracy, our responsibility, our opportunity, and indeed our obligation to do something. To the Truman Center, to your amazing leadership, Chairman, and to all of you, thank you for this honor and this privilege. Look, today is a historic day after. You know, these days after happen throughout our history for both great reasons and tragic ones. There are moments in time when our nation has been transformed and transfigured in ways that are hard to express in words. Our collective consciousness remembers these days afters, the day after Dr. King's assassination, the day after the Rodney King trial verdict, the day after 9/11, the day after President Obama's election, the day after the Dobbs decision that got folks like me and Scott really riled up to do more, right? We remember these day afters. And today we are experiencing an extraordinary day after. The day after the former president of the United States is convicted of 34 felony counts in New York and a hush money payment to an adult film star in order to skew an election 8 years ago to his favor. This is a wild day after. And I got to say, I got a whole lot of complaints about the criminal legal system and the injustices that it wreaks havoc on in our communities, but it got this right. And so I'm glad about this day after. For many of us, we celebrate that the rule of law does, in fact, apply to the wealthy, to white men, powerful people who often are not treated the same way that poor folks are. And Brian Stevenson, the founder of the Equal Justice Initiative, he says, if you are poor and black but innocent, you are treated worse than somebody who's white, wealthy, and guilty. This is the America that we live in, and so this day after is quite different than what we typically anticipate or expect to happen. But can I also be quite honest with you? I believe that this day after has also frightened me, has worried me in ways that I have not been for quite some time. And in these few moments, I want to share with you why I'm somewhat terrified about this day after. People in positions of power today, not people who are running for office, but people who are in positions of power today, like the governor of Tennessee, the chairman of the Republican Party in our state, the caucus chairman, the leader, the Speaker of the House in the United States Congress, have raised up against the criminal legal system for holding Donald accountable for crimes he committed. That 12 people, his peers, decided he committed. That has been done in this country for centuries. A grand jury, prosecutors. This whole process has played out in the way that we expect for things to. But instead of recognizing the outcome of the justice system, people in positions of power today are railing against the democratic ideals and principles of equal justice under the law, and that no person is above the law. These anti-constitutional subversions of America's institutions are harrowing. They are reminders. They're reminders of the effect of things like the big lie, where the congressmen, our congressmen, were afraid in the People's House, in Congress, about what insurrectionists would do on January 6th. This subversion, this supporting of anti-constitutional attitudes is terrifying because these comments that they are saying strike at the very heart of the foundational and fundamental values that we hold as what America is and what America should be. And we must ask ourselves, who are we if we are valueless? Who are we without the aspiration toward the values of equal justice under the law? Who are we when the voices and the faces of tyranny are the ones who are supporting tyrants and helping to make people authoritarians? I fear that we devolve into a strongman racism under which the USA flag becomes nothing more than a banner of faux freedom. And this should worry all of us, independents, Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Green Party, People's Party, whoever you are. This should worry all of us because I do not believe that we are only in a fight about people telling the truth or a lie. We're in a fight about people seeking to preserve a country that has existed for several centuries, and those who are willing to dismantle it on behalf of a white supremacist, domestic terrorist felon. And so let us hold true to the truth, which in this country can be hard sometimes. As the Congressman mentioned, gun violence is the #1 killer of our children. Billionaires made trillions on the back of all of us during a pandemic and fabricated an inflation that they're now saying they're going to fix by reducing prices that they increased in the first place. Environmental and climate racism and injustice remains one of the greatest existential crises of our day and time. We have tornadoes ravaging different parts of our country right now, flooding and fires in California. We have these things that are, in and of themselves, humbling. And in our state, and I was talking earlier, we've been gerrymandered in such a way that people have built the state to be more conservative than the populace and then misusing and abusing their power, even though they are no longer supported by the majority of people in the state. This is where we are. And now, our Republicans in Tennessee talking about they support a felon for president, while we pass the most felon disenfranchisement laws in the country. 1 in 5 black people in Tennessee cannot vote due to felon disenfranchisement. But today, all of them were saying, let's support a convicted felon for president of the United States. But he can't vote in Tennessee. This is where we are. And I realize I'm nearly out of time here, so let me get to the end. I do not believe that America has achieved all that it can be or will be, but I do believe that we cannot afford to lose the courage to speak truth to power. We cannot lose the courage to support our republic. We cannot lose the courage to support this democratic constitutional experiment that without our very hands, our very hearts, our very feet, our very souls into it, we might lose it. Y'all, the problem is not white supremacy existing in and of itself. It's white supremacy with power. The problem is not racism existing in and of itself. It's racism with power. The problem is not patriarchy existing in and of itself. It's patriarchy with power. These are the realities that we are living in with people in positions of power today, not running for president, but being in positions of power today, misuse their voices and misuse their power against us. And our hope for the future is not just going to be in a party, though vote Democrat. Our hope for the future will be found in the people of good conscience and goodwill who fight for what we believe in. And I believe we have to believe what we say, and then we've got to act on it. We must believe in freedom and fight for it. We must believe in justice and demand it. We must believe in hope and use it as our source of renewable energy in a movement for justice rooted in love in order that we might get through our darkest days. We must believe in an America and who America can be, not just who it is currently, in order that the words written by Thomas Jefferson will not just be hollow, but hallowed. That we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We must believe that in this country, in states even like Tennessee and South Carolina and Mississippi and Nebraska and Iowa and Georgia, we must believe that it is possible for justice to roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. So let this be our promise to ourselves and to future generations as we refuse to give up, as we refuse to be bowed down or broken and bent, that our best days are ahead because we're going to use our God hands to make them. We're going to use our God feet to march for them. We're going to use our God heart to stay connected. And I'm so glad to be in this movement for justice rooted in love with you. Thank you so much.
Can you guys, oh, there we go. All right, I got louder. I'm always loud, but I got louder. So I'm supposed to follow that. That's fun. I think I know the answer to this, but I wanted to start off with something, kind of light. How do you both feel about the state of our democracy right now?
You first. Well, I feel better today on Friday than I felt on Wednesday. I'm with Justin. Look, injustice happens suddenly and profusely and constantly. Justice takes a lot longer to act. We believe in the presumption of innocence, and we believe in trial by jury, and we believe the right to counsel. And as a defendant, you've got a right to testify or to choose not to testify. And we saw all of the full panoply of rights being respected, and we saw a jury of 12 peers render justice. And that's something that we can feel proud of. And I think it was a little bit cathartic and a little bit exhilarating for people. As I've traveled around the country, I hear people say all the time, there will never be justice, there will never be any rectification. And I think people saw a glimpse of justice, and and a lot of people have been wanting to see it. And of course, it's not about one person. I mean, it's really about what kind of society we're going to have. And all over the earth today, democracy's under siege by autocrats in Moscow and kleptocrats in Mar-a-Lago and theocrats in MAGA and Mike Johnson and plutocrats all over the world. And it is as flawed as imperfect as we are, it is only the Democrats that are going to beat all of those people. But it requires popular engagement and a real love of democracy and freedom, the kind that you can see exuded by this great young leader. Yeah.
I'm going to take 1 second, and then I'll let you answer. But for the C3 folks, that was a small d Democrat.
That was small d.
Small d Democrat. Yeah. For the record. All right, now you can continue.
And to balance it out, I'll close by invoking our last great Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, who spoke of government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And it is that Republican standard which we will strive towards in defending democracy. So.
I love that. May it never perish from the earth, right? But how does that happen, right? It doesn't by just watching television, right? Democracy isn't just voting either. What I have witnessed now being at the State House, the people who show up in between time, they got a whole lot of influence. The people who march in between time, and I mean march around the building and march to your office, they have a lot of influence and power. And so when I think about the state of democracy, it is holding a beautiful tension, right? Things seem to be in so much peril in so many places. And there's so much opportunity and possibility. And what I lean into, what we lean into, what we must lean into is the possibilities that democracy offers us. That's why Donald is deeply concerning. And the MAGA movement is deeply concerning because they're trying to remove our ability to fight for what we believe in. That's what's at stake. Right? Democracy means you can have your opinion and I can have mine, and we can go and fight about it and argue about it and disagree about it and go back home. But what we are entering into and what we are seeing with the erosion of democracy in Tennessee, and this is happening in a lot of places where there's supermajority leadership, I don't believe it's healthy for democracy, lowercase d. I don't believe it's healthy because what is happening is the silencing of voices. Duly elected representatives being expelled because you didn't like what we said. See, that is scary, right? Because you could imagine a different world, a different time, decades from now, where something is being changed in the United States Constitution. And states can say, nope, you're not going to vote with us. That's going to mess with the vote count. We're going to go ahead and expel you, get you out of here, change the United States Constitution, right? Because people continue to erode the power, erode democracy, build up the more authoritarian actions, build up more fascist actions, and we suffer, the people. And so when I think about the state of our democracy, it is not as strong as it should be, but it is our only hope. Because any time that we've been able to move forward, and I'm thinking particularly about black history and black folks in this country, helping to make the 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, 15th Amendment possible, making the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act possible, like all of those things happen because what happens outside of the institution and what happens inside of it. But you had an institution to fight against, an institution to fight to change, an institution to demand things from. What happens when we destroy those institutions and instead put people, very fickle-minded people in those positions of power? Like we lose our ability to fight for what we believe in. And America's existence, as far as I am understanding it and am experiencing it, relies on our ability, right, to demand for it to be better. And sometimes the people in power listen. And that's great. And you always want that to happen. But you always believe that possibility is there, that you can advocate for something. And maybe you convince those people to change. But we're losing that. We're losing it, and that's deeply concerning. And so we can't, this isn't to make anybody sad or mopey. This is to say we've got to be more engaged now than ever, because I felt we were more democratic when I was, he said I'm young, but when I was even younger than we are now. And it's like 10 years from now, we'll be more democratic or less democratic as a country.
That does seem to be the point that we are at. Okay, next one. Representative Raskin, you served through January 6th and then led the House investigation into it, which revealed that some of your colleagues helped the insurrectionists. Representative Pearson, you were expelled, let's be real, for governing while black. That's why Gloria didn't get expelled. And then won your seat back, but are still constantly being harassed. However, neither of you have the luxury of letting that abuse get to you, because the reality of being effective in government means you have to actively seek out consensus with people who mean you harm. How do you keep your cool and maintain effectiveness when you're constantly faced with a hostile environment? That's why we started light.
Well, it is very important to bring your sense of humor with you to work, at least where I work. You know, I try to find the humanity and the point of empathy and commonality with everybody. I'm a middle child, so I like to bring people together, you know, and but, you know, sometimes, you know, like Lauren Boebert, for example, somebody who's my friend, you know, and she voted with us, by the way, when we had our recent controversy with MTG and the fake eyelashes and taking the words down. Lauren Boebert, much to her credit, voted with us, and I think it's because a number of us have relationships with her, and she's got a relationship with us. But at the same time, she challenges me, and I challenge her. Like, one of the problems I have with them is, I just give this by way of illustrative example. It's not a partisan point, but some of our colleagues across the aisle cannot correctly pronounce the name of our political party in its adjectival form. So, AOC will make a speech and they'll say, well, that Democrat congresswoman with her Democrat bill and her Democrat amendment. And for 7 years, I got up and I said, no, Democrat is the noun. Okay, and you've got to say Democratic, the Democratic congresswoman, the Democratic bill. And then she kept doing it you can find this one on YouTube. We went back and forth, and then all of them started getting into Matt Gaetz and Jim Jordan, everything Democrat this, Democrat that. So I sort of lost my temper, and I said, well, you've got this self-appointed political speech impediment over on your side, and it's kind of contagious. Now when I try to say the name of your party, it just comes out the Banana Republican Party and the Banana Republican Congresswoman. And so I went home and I told my wife, and I said, I finally got them back after all these years. And she said, that was a very immature response. But here's the good news, okay? You got to keep your sense of humor, but you also have to keep your mind open to the world of history and ideas outside of your little legislative echo chamber. I was reading this great book about Franklin D. Roosevelt called Traitor to His Class by H.W. Brand, and I learned something remarkable. FDR did not call our party the Democratic Party, much less the Democrat Party. He called it, at least the historians transcribe it with a capital D, called it the democracy. So there's a speech, he says, well, the economic royalists and the plutocrats say invest in just the wealthiest people in America. Some of the wealth will dribble down on everybody else. But the democracy says you invest in the great American working middle class and we'll all rise and prosper together. So now when they can't pronounce the name of our party, I say, just do what FDR and Eleanor did. Call us the democracy, because that's what we are these days. So.
Thank you for the question. Look, I am not making friends with white supremacists. It's not happening. It's just not going to happen. Truly, it's like if you have drawn your line that your center of interest and care is only in the maintenance of your own power, there's nothing I can do for you because what I spend every single day doing is saying, how do we get power to people who've been made powerless by systems that privilege the powerful? And so if you're saying, I'm wealthy, I don't want to share wealth. I have education. I don't want other people to get it. If that's how you operate, like, there's nothing for us to do. And you know what? That's okay. Because there are people who said, I've never thought about my wealth that way. I've never thought about my privilege that way. I never thought about my class that way. Let me see if there's something I can do differently. And I'm looking at white people here in particular. There's an important word that I hope you leave with if you understand nothing else. It's called social location. Say social location. Social location means that you take whatever position you are and you put it proximate to people who have not been benefited by the same social location that you now find yourself. This guy, obviously one of the most powerful people in the country, right? If he shows up next to someone who is impoverished at a city council meeting, do you think people who are in the positions of power look differently at the person who's impoverished coming to them, saying, hey, I have an issue and a concern? Of course they do. Of course they will. Because you choose a social location with the marginalized. You choose a social location with people who have been oppressed. You choose a social location with people who have not been given the same level of access, and you disrupt the status quo. And so for my colleagues and for my friends at the Tennessee General Assembly, I have decided I will not compromise. And some people say that's really bad. You know, compromise is a good word. I think compromise is a terrible word. Because, you know, every time that I hear compromise, what happens? Black people get compromised. Queer people get compromised. Women's rights get compromised. Every time compromise happens, it's like you lose a little and I lose a little. But if I don't have anything to lose, you're taking part of my humanity away. So now what do? I'm seeking common ground. You care about clean air? So do I. You care about clean water? So do I. You care about clean soil? So do I. You care about saving kids so they don't die from gun violence? So do I. Let's find common ground, but I refuse to compromise because every time that we compromise, it's always on the backs of the poor and the marginalized. But instead, let's find some common ground and let's work from there. Because then you don't have to, there's nothing for you to give, nothing for me to give, but ourselves and our time and our energy and our love for the people that we care about. And believe it or not, there's some Republicans in the Tennessee General Assembly I found some common ground with, and haven't had to go along to get along, haven't had to sell my soul, haven't had to do any of those things. Because you know what? At the end of the day, I do believe with most people, you want to be alive and live a life that's well-meaning. And you want that for your family, you want that for your loved ones just as much as I do. And if people are intentional about seeing the humanity in one another, despite all the other things, I think we can actually get more progress done. A lot of people aren't willing to do that, and I ain't gonna lie, right there, out there. But that's where our goal is. No more compromise. We're willing to find common ground, though.
I like that framing a lot. Thank you both for what you put up with at work every day. I would suggest you need a union. I would just try it out. Might help. Collective bargaining rights, I don't know. Okay. We're going to get a little nerdy in the civics lessons now. Representative Raskin, prior to your time in Congress, you served in the Maryland State Senate. And Representative Pearson, you currently serve in the Tennessee State House. Given our federalist system, what support do states need from the federal government that they aren't getting? And conversely, what problems do states need to step up and solve and step kicking up to the federal level because it doesn't function? I have other questions if you don't, it's fine.
Just fix Mike Johnson.
All right. Well, we're emerging from a period of tremendous federal support for the states. It started in COVID-19, the American Rescue Act, CARES Act. I hear from mayors and county executives and people who at the local level in Maryland that they love the investments that have been made over the last 4 years and the Biden administration. That we're very proud of the Infrastructure Act, a $1.2 trillion investment in the roads and the highways and the bridges and the ports and the airports, and that's what government should be doing. So I think that that's a model of how we can work together. I think we have a wonderful dynamic between federal and local government when it comes to stuff like infrastructure and transportation, where we need and education, where we need lots of local participation, lots of local involvement, local leadership, but at the same time we need federal government resources and also some federal government help and subsidy. But I think we have got to remember that rights need to be national, right. Universal. That's right. And we're in a situation now with abortion rights and birth control and mifepristone and everything, not unlike, what Lincoln was facing, when he said the country cannot survive half slave and half free. Mm-hmm. It's going to be all one thing or all the other. I don't know how long America can really last this way. I think over a third of American women are now in states that criminalize abortion. I mean, so they end up with a problematic pregnancy and suddenly they're hemorrhaging in the backseat of their car because a doctor refuses to administer health care because they think they might be prosecuted and end up in jail for the rest of their life. We got state legislatures that are passing laws making it a crime to leave the state with someone who's seeking an abortion, right? Which totally, seems to burden a little bit the right to travel, the right to health care in the country. So I don't think we're going to be able to last half anti-choice and half pro-choice, half theocrat and half free. I don't think that is going to work. And so we should be thinking about constitutional rights universally and federalism as a process for figuring out at what levels of government people can best address local problems.
Absolutely. Love that.
But yes, everything he just said. Right? I mean, it's so true. I believe the litmus test for American democracy and our ability to survive is not going to be in Massachusetts, New York, and L.A. I think you're going to have to spend some time in Mississippi and Tennessee and Nebraska and Iowa and these places that too often are overlooked and underinvested in. That's actually where state house members and state senate folks need support, need access to information, need more resources that we currently do not have. And the reality is these are the places where we are losing our rights the most. And so when you look at the news, it is in Mississippi and Florida and Texas and Tennessee where we did ban transgender affirming health care, where we did prevent and say that it's in essence kidnapping to take someone across state lines to go and get access to an abortion or the health care that they need. Like, that's not freedom. But you have to believe in the core of your being, wherever you are, if you're in D.C. or Virginia or Maryland, wherever you are, that if the folks in Tennessee are not free, then I can't be. Like, that's actually what it takes. Because the only reason we've gotten to the place that we are, one of the reasons we've gotten to the place where we are, is that the people in those states who are in power, they say no one cares about y'all. Nobody's paying attention. Nobody's invested. Nobody's interested. And you end up with like 2 of the youngest black lawmakers getting expelled. And then people being like, wait, things are that bad? Yes! Things are that bad, and they're going to get worse. All right, so we got to pay attention to the places that have been disinvested in. And I think as it relates to sort of like our federalist structure, everybody loves Congress and the Supreme Court and the presidency, and like those things are great. These state houses, and you will know this, these state houses are super powerful. Like millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of people's lives are being shaped every time that folks walk into their capital. And I'm a state legislator now. I did not know how powerful they were till we were in there. Like, for real. I didn't know how powerful they were. I was like, wait, this is too much power, right? Like, our lives for 4 months, January through April, Tennessee changes. Because some people in the State House said, we need to change this. We need to prevent local governments from being able to do this. They tried to ban the study of reparations. Seriously, the study of it. That was one bill we defeated, very proud about. But like that could happen, right? And that is happening in so many of our states where you're seeing a supermajority really abuse their power. And so invest and pay attention to what's happening at the state level and stay engaged. If you don't know who your Speaker of the House is at the state level, if you don't know who your Senate Majority Leader is at the state level, if you don't know who the Lieutenant Governor is at the state level, like who is your state representative, your state senator, like those are people who are doing some transformational things. And they don't get as much attention as the amazing folks in Congress or the Supreme Court or the presidency, but millions of people's lives are changing every single day because of the actions that they take or don't take.
Thank you so much. All right, last question. I'm actually technically out of time, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So that's because it's for you guys. So you have an audience of Truman members, and I don't know how familiar you have been before recently with Truman, but all of these people are connected by not just the value that America can and should be better, but by actually be willing to do the work. And they do the work in governments and in policy and in nonprofit and in industry all over the world. I mean, I can't believe they let me in here. God. What is the most effective thing that they can do to strengthen democracy and make it more representative?
I was just thinking about your last comment, Justin. When I was visiting Maxwell Frost in Florida, Governor DeSantis banned sociology. But luckily, they also solved the climate crisis because he banned the use of the words climate change on the government websites. So, people are banning a lot of stuff these days. Yeah.
Your book in Texas. Right?
Yeah, and my book in Texas. But my book, We the Students, which was sponsored by the Supreme Court Historical Society, got banned in Texas. And the very next day, I got banned for life from Russia by Vladimir Putin for my pro-Ukrainian.
That's awesome.
So I got banned in Texas and Russia, but I'm making it at the TruCon conference.
That's the one that matters.
So, I mean, I think, this is really the toughest question we get, I suppose, because, everybody has got to be doing different things according to where they are, their social position, and who they can influence and who they can help, who they can strategize with. And so I would think of it in both individual and collective terms. There are things that we can do collectively that are going to be so important. Tocqueville in Democracy in America said that democracy and voting rights are either shrinking and shriveling away or they're growing and expanding. So we have millions of people who still can't vote because they've got laws which say you get out of prison, you have every other right restored to you except the right to vote. That's just wrong. So we got to deal with that problem. You're sitting in a city which has 713,000 tax-paying, draftable U.S. citizens who are the only residents of a national capital on the planet Earth who are not represented in their own federal legislature. If you told the people of Paris they couldn't be represented in the French National Assembly, you'd have another French Revolution on your hands. And when we passed DC statehood in the House in the last Congress, in the 117th Congress, I got to be the floor leader for that. And I started just by thanking the people of Washington who have a verifiable, bona fide political grievance and yet did not come down to the Capitol and beat the daylights out of our Capitol officers and put 150 people in the hospital and wound them, but they did it the right way. They've petitioned for statehood. It's time for statehood for people in Washington, D.C. And it's time for statehood for 3.5 million Americans living in Puerto Rico. Let's make that happen too. So it's the 21st century, and how about it's time we start electing the president the way we elect governors and representatives and senators and mayors? Whoever gets the most votes wins, right? We spend tens of millions of dollars a year exporting American democracy to countries who are writing new constitutions. The one thing they never come back to us with is, that electoral college thing you've got? We're going to import that to our country. Now, nobody really wants to mess with it. And these days, electoral college can get you killed, as we saw on January 6th. So collectively, I think we've got to get democracy moving again and get back on the growth track. And John Dewey said, the only solution to the ills of democracy is more democracy. And what we're suffering from today is the impediments, the obstacles to democracy, like Justin's talking about with the gerrymandering of our districts, the disenfranchisement of former prisoners, the voter suppression tactics, and so on. So we got to get back on the democracy growth trail. And then, individually, I think one thing everybody can think about is connecting with young people. It's been a really tough time for young people. What a lot of us middle-aged people have experienced is an utter aberration and a deviation from what we have known America to be, is kind of all they've known. That's right. And they're worried about climate change, and they're worried about gun violence, and they're worried about authoritarianism, and they're worried about political division, and they're right to worry about all of it. And we got to reach out to them and let them know that it's going to be all right. We're going to get through it. And one of the ways we're going to get through it is through collective political action. And we're going to reach out to people, and we're going to listen to young people. And they've got a lot to contribute. Just tell them, just because, a political party's not perfect or a political leader's not perfect, doesn't mean you drop out at that point. That's the reason to get involved and to get engaged. And anybody who tells me, well, I'm just feeling jaded or cynical or burnt out, then I say, great, because that's Vladimir Putin's plan. That's Steve Bannon's plan. He wants everybody to be jaded and cynical and so on, and they'll go get everybody to vote on their side. They don't really need to be told to vote. They're just going to go and vote. So we don't have time now for people to be jaded and to drop out. We need everybody engaged. And I'll just leave you with the words of my dad, who used to tell us when we were kids, when everything looks hopeless, you're the hope. So you go be the hope.
I love that. I love that.
We gotta make it really quick because I'm getting stink eye.
Very good. I got you really quickly. And I love the individual and collective. Individually, are you, if you are able to vote, do you in every election? Do you vote in every election? School board, city council, county commission, sheriff. Do you vote in every election? If you are not able to vote, do you know somebody who is? And do you make sure that they are engaged, right? People think about like, oh, let's register 1,000 people. Is everybody in your family who is able to vote, do they go to the polls? Just take 5 of them, 10. I got 500 people in my family. It's huge, right? They are my summer and my winter and my next year project, right? But it's just like the power that we are looking for, right? It is in us. Like we have it. Like in this idea, and I love this, right? It's more democracy. It's really like what are you doing, right, to make us more democratic? Because like we do have power. And I think that's one of the greatest lies and narratives of people who want to keep a status quo is that we are powerless. But we are extraordinarily powerful. And maybe you don't even go to your family. Like, is everybody who can vote in TruCon going to the polls? And are y'all all tweeting and texting at each other on during early voting? Don't wait for election day. Right? Like that, it's like where are our sources of power is where we gather. And so let us not lose that because this is power. This is what democracy looks like, and I'm just glad to be in the fight with y'all.
Thank you both so much. All right. We're done. I think you can. No, we're not. JK. Oh my God, I'm so sorry.